are moving to our second speaker, who is the poet of the seven seas. As I was saying, Ikenna is both a marine engineer and a poet from Nigeria. And through his poems, he gives the ocean a voice, reflecting the resilience of seafarers and connecting human emotions to the life of the sea. He will also share with us ocean literacy and poems. What's the relationship? So, Ikenna, welcome, and the stage and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Justine, and sorry, thank you, Sophia, and thank you, Chris, and thank you very much. It was a very, very nice presentation, and I also want to thank ECOP for this great opportunity because it's something that comes once in a while, and I'm always glad to have this kind of opportunity where I can share, some of my knowledge and some of the things I know, and I really, really appreciate this opportunity. So I really thank you people for organizing a program like this so that we can get to share our ideas and see the way we can be able to preserve our ocean, preserve everything that has to do with our life. Thank you very much. So just like Sophia said, my name is Ikenna Ebin, yeah, and I'm from Nigeria, and I am a seafarer by profession. And I'm a seafarer by profession. So I'll just talk a little bit about myself um, and how poetry has been able to shape my life and how I've been able to use poetry to try to talk about things and try to give a voice to things like the ocean, like seafarers and all those stuff. So for me, poetry is just that lock up the voice inside of us. Okay. Sometimes you are just there trying to, yeah, there's some this kind of voice that you can't really say it out, but it's just there within your mind, within your brain, and it's just roaming around and you don't know how to let it out. So I usually have this kind of voices in my ears, like I just try to, how do I let this thing out? So that was where the point where poetry comes in, and I started, writing the things that comes to my mind, those voices, those things that comes to my mind. I try to put them out. So talking about writing about for the sea, I'm from Nigeria, and I'm from the Igbo, and we are not riverine people. Okay, so there's no way you will say that, oh, what actually drew my attention to the ocean. So because we are not from the riverine, I'm not from the riverine area. But I was born in a riverine area. I'm not really riverine per se, but I was born around there, so I could see the river banks, and I always like to go there because I just want to experience a different life. But African parents, they will not want you to go there, especially when my cousin when my cousin lost his life at while he was trying to fish. So anything about the river we were out of bound for us. But I had my father who was also working on the river as a trader. He trades, all mostly in just these West African countries. So I drew my inspiration there. I never even knew I would become a seafarer because I wanted to become a doctor. But life has its way, and I became a seafarer, and I just grew in love with the profession. And and poetry has helped my life because I try to give a voice to everything around me. So now talking about the ocean, as a seafarer, there are annexes that governs us, that regulations. And the one of them, the topmost one of them, which is very, very important, very, very vital, has to do with marine pollution. And when it has to do with marine pollution, when we talk about the sea, which is the international maritime organization, and it's one that's the MARPOL, we call it MARPOL, marine pollution. So marine pollution regulation, pollution at sea. So when you talk about this pollution at sea, what comes to your mind? And being from Africa, most times when my ship comes to Lagos, or we are sailing to Togo or to Benin Republic or towards Ghana, there's something always different about our our oceans, and it looks as if we don't take care of our oceans just like the way people outside do. It looks as if the regulations, we don't really follow them. We just tend to live our life, and we forget that this ocean is actually our source of livelihood. And the story of Africa cannot be told without the ocean, because from um, the ocean is the memory that stores. For me, if I should put it in poetic terms, I would say that the ocean is the memory that stores our existence. Everything we are looking for is in the ocean. Our history is in the ocean. Our story is in the ocean. So we cannot really talk about Africa without mentioning the ocean. Talking about the slave trade, the transatlantic slave trade, talking about you know um, goods, how everything, how our languages have been changed, how talking about the colonial era. So you cannot say these things without the ocean. And one thing I also want us to know that 90% of the world's economy relies on the ocean also. So if we cannot protect this ocean, which is also our heritage, so how then are we going to live life? Because the ocean itself is a source of life. So that being said, I won't want to say too much. So I would just want to talk about the ocean and how it relates to poetry or the relation between poetry and ocean and the ocean. So I'll be just sharing a short slide of about just five slides. Now, ocean literacy, poetry and ocean literacy. So, how does this ocean relate to poetry? So, what can we really talk about poetry? How does it relate entirely? Now, being Africans, we know that there are so many things we do. Both our adage, both our songs, all of them have a word, have these wordings of poetry, have these rhymes. So there's always a way poetry can be always related to the ocean. But first of all, before we can actually dive deep into this, we need to know what poetry really means. So now, in simple terms, when talking about poetry, we can say poetry is a form of creative writing that contains some particular elements such as verse, rhymes, and stanzas. But one thing you have to know about poetry is that it has to be intentional. Okay, if you are writing a particular rhymes, let's assume when you're writing about a rhyme, so you have to make it intentional. It's not just your day-to-day word, just like the way I'm talking now. I'm talking, there's no rhyme, there's no stanza, there's no this. So poetry has to come with intentionality. You have to be intentional while um, while writing your poetry. So you have to be intentional about the verses, about the stanza. So it comes with, it must be intentional while you are doing that. So, and how can poetry help express a deep emotional connection in Africa? How can poetry help us? So, poetry conveys a strong, um, deep emotional feeling that expresses our great inspiration and can speak to the human spirit and soul. Normally, they normally say that music is for the soul, but poetry itself is also for the soul and also for the spirit. Because poetry has a way that has a way to command attention, both for your command attention also to your body. So poetry itself has a deep connection. Like for instance, do you know that in most of our rituals, like for those who are for those who are traditionalists, okay, you see them when they are doing some of their incantations. Most of them are actually poetry, but you may not notice it because you are not the one who is directly involved. But when you see them making these incantations, making the incantations to maybe to the goddess of the sea, the goddess of the river, and all those stuff. So mostly it is poetry. So if you understand their language, so poetry can actually be in any language, can actually be in English, can actually be in Igbo, in Swahili, it can actually be in Zulu. So but it has to be intentional. So it is the intentionality of the verse, the stanzas, that's what makes it poetry. So now, what's the connection between the ocean and poetry? Number one, poetry can be used for storytelling. Okay, like for instance, where I come from Ohofia. I'm from the Igbo speaking, I like the Igbo speaking tribe, Ohofia. So there is this traditional dance we have, and it's called the Ohofia War Dance. You can check it out maybe on YouTube. It's a kind of popular dance where they carry human skull and they dance. So when you listen to their rhymes, when you listen to their, if you understand the Ohofia language, you will know that they are speaking poetry. Okay, it tells a story a of a people who migrated from somewhere to somewhere to somewhere to become who they are today. So poetry has a way of telling stories. So poetry also, number two, poetry is also can be used for social commentary in connection to Africa. It can use, like for instance, there are so many things that are happening in our waters, you know. For instance, if you come to Nigeria, to the Niger Delta part, you see that there are so many pollutions that are happening in our waters, and poetry can help give a voice that can speak against these things that are happening in our society. So poetry is that voice that can speak to anybody. For instance, somebody can just come on the list and start saying, "Oh, they polluted our water," and that has been going on, and people will be protesting. But when you use poetry and somebody listens to it, it has a way of bringing somebody's humanity back because there is a time that our conscience are being shut out. So once our conscience are being shut out, we don't tend to, we tend to forget that we are humans and things we do can actually affect our fellow human beings. But poetry has a way of reversing our mindset and bringing it back to the factory setting, which is our humanity, that will make you have a consciousness that whatsoever you are going to do or whatsoever you are about to do will affect your neighbor. Okay? So now, poetry, which is my number three, can also be used to express your personal expression. Remember, when I started, I talked about saying that there's this voice that is always locked up in you, that you always want people to hear you out. Like, for instance, there are some people who are depressed and they don't know how to they don't know how to say it out. They don't know how to talk. They don't know how to, tell people what they are going through. You can actually pen them down in express them via poetry, like express our deep feelings, because so most of the time we can actually talk without thinking. But poetry will help you to write while thinking. Whatever you are thinking, you can be able to write it right. So that poetry help you not to be found guilty. Because most of the times when we want to let's for instance for social commentary, you might just get angry about things that are happening in the society and you just want to let out, the annoyance, everything in you. And like for instance in Nigeria, we have this social media bill when you just go and type things on social media, they might likely sue you to court for all those things. But with poetry, poetry will help you to structure your words in a way that it will hit the conscience and reset the human brain to be able to, to adjust themselves to do things rightly. So now, the roles poetry play in ocean literacy and conservation. So what can poetry do in ocean literacy? How can it conserve? How can we protect our oceans? How can we change the norms or change the things that have been happening around us? Now, poetry can be used to create awareness. You know, poetry can be used to create awareness. For instance, there have been so many awareness that have been created. Like if you go through, taking, for instance, all these genital mutilations, that's happening in Africa, and all these, let's say, what is it called, other environmental hazards. They have been talking about things, but concerning the ocean, I hardly see people who talk about, preserving the ocean, protecting the ocean. So me being a seafarer, and when I go around other places and I see how they put laws to protect their ocean. And I'm just like, why can't we do the same thing in Africa? Imagine you go to maybe somewhere in Europe and you polluting their water or putting oil or pollution that's marine pollution by oil, that's you pumping oil into the sea or polluting their waters with oil or with any toxic chemical. You have a fine to pay for it. But mostly in our African countries, all these things happen and nobody really cares. There's no strong law or there's no strong enforcement of these laws to protect our waters. So with poetry, we can create awareness, and that's mostly what I do with my poetry work to create awareness. Oh, this is what is happening. I come in the voice of the ocean, like I say, okay, this is the ocean speaking through me. Okay, giving the ocean a voice to speak because if you are waiting for the ocean to speak, the ocean will not speak because nobody will say, hey, you'll say, oh, the ocean is not a living thing. So because it cannot speak. So, but I am coming in the voice of the ocean to create awareness that this is what is happening to the ocean. The ocean is crying. The ocean is all emotion about all this. We are destroying the ocean. So, what thing helps create that awareness about whatsoever you want to do, not just about the ocean. It helps create awareness of whatever you are going through, of what is happening around our world, of just to create awareness. You can actually use poetry. Like most of people, the ones we are conversant is using poetry as a kind of like for love, all these love poems and all those stuff. But poetry has much more to do. That's why I say poetry can be used to create awareness. Okay. Now, another thing, poetry can be used for storytelling. You can use poetry to talk about how our existence. Actually, it's actually a poem I was working at. I was writing about how the ocean. I'm not done with the poem yet, but it has to do with the ocean, like how um everything we have, how the ocean, how everything came through the ocean and changed our livelihood and changed who we are and changed who we are, taking us out from who we were. So poetry can be used for storytelling, and it can also be used as an educational tool. You know, when we were growing up, we were taught poetry. In Nigeria here, we have these subjects in primary school that's normally literature and poems. So we have to memorize poems like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, How I Wonder What You Are. We memorize those poems. So poetry can be used as an educational tool where we use, to help children and if we can actually catch these children young, like I loved poetry when I was younger, but most of the time teachers would be saying, "Oh, maybe you're not good at this, maybe you're not good at this." I just got to know that I had this passion after I had become a seafarer. Like even when I was in secondary school, I was like I couldn't join the poetry group. Why? Because I felt because they told me you cannot do this. Why? Because I was not too much outspoken, just like every other person. But I came to know that I had this passion for poetry when I had already become a seafarer. And you see, if we can if we can enhance our educational system with poetry, it will really go a long way to speak against all the social things, social wrongdoings that's happening in our country, and speak against all the moral decadence that's happening in our society. So now, poetry can make ocean literacy easy, and it can connect people of all religion, background, and race. Poetry is not something that can be said is just for a particular people. Poetry is not just for Christians, it's not for Muslims, it's not for traditionalists, it's not for people who are Hindu, who are Buddhist, it's not for people who are Nigerian, not for but everybody can read. Poetry is something that does not have a religion, doesn't have a nationality, doesn't have a race. You can't say poetry is black, you can't say poetry is white, you can't say poetry is a Christian or a Muslim. But poetry will come to you as a human. It comes with our humanity and it will touch your spirit without you associating yourself to any of these social tags like Christian, Muslim. Poetry does not have a gender. Okay, poetry is just there. It's just there. It doesn't need you to give it a tag to belong to anybody. It doesn't need your permission to be able to access your soul. Once you hear it, you will be able to, relate with the message it is passing. So with this few, it's just a short stuff so that to prepare your mind, so that you're going to present a poem. This poem is just all about, it's talking about um me being the ocean. Like while I was writing the poem, I tried to, come see myself as being the ocean and see myself the activities that have been done around me and how has it affected me and how will I use it to affect humans? Because whatever we give the ocean gives us back. So it's just like garbage in, garbage out. So whatever you give the ocean will give it back to you in 100 folds. And we know that the ocean, we came here and met the ocean. So we will live and we will still leave the ocean. So the ocean is something that is constant. So whatever we do will affect the next generation coming. So that is why we have to protect the ocean so that our humanity will be preserved.
If the oceans could speak, if the waves had a voice, would we still harm or ignore its cries? If we could hear the sounds of the sea, if we could understand the reading of its crest and trough, would we respect or adore it? Listen, let me speak the tongue of the ocean. I am the ocean, vast and wide. I am the earth's life-giving tide, teeming with life of every kind. I link the nations of the earth from the deep. I give shelter to the aquatic, a world which I keep. I carry your ships and never complain. I give you food, air, and even a beautiful view beyond compare. Yet, you treat me with disgrace. Heads up, let me speak. I gave you no restrictions to explore me. I gave you the treasures of the deep within me. I never overflowed my set bounds to your lands. I never rebelled against any of your plans. From your clans, you pollute me by dumping plastics, cans, oil, and chemical waste. In a careless haste, you stain my crown. You want me to smile and not frown? Do I seem like a clown? Just to remind you, the earth spins round and round. Play with me like a merry-go-round. You will get back what you give me in rounds. I am a cheerful giver. I am the ocean. I live without an end. What is your obligation? Tell me by your action. Are you a fool or a friend? Now you have the opportunity. Now let me speak in a common tongue. Not for long. The earth was given to us to dwell in. Our ocean is a source of life. Our obligation is to keep it safe, because out of it comes our opportunity, not just to live, but to come together to protect it.
So what we are talking about is that the ocean itself has a vital role to play in our life. And I believe with this little presentation, I've been able to make a point. And I believe we'll be able to protect our oceans more. Thank you very much. My name is Ikenna Ebin. Thank you.
Ikenna, for your presentation, for showing us and sharing with us your art, for recalling also the fact that ocean literacy is an outcome because we want to generate this awareness among people, among youth, among coastal communities, and for reminding us that ocean literacy is an outcome, but ocean education, and we have other tools that we can use, and one of them is poetry and poem. Thank you so much for sharing. And I don't know if we have an insight. Maybe you want to share your emotion after seeing this poem, these beautiful images, but also the truth and the wisdom behind those words. So please feel free to share your insights. We are waiting for it. Okay, sure, Chris. So if anyone has an insight about Ikenna's presentation, poem, or what do you think about it? How do you want to encourage him also to maybe share his second poem with us? So please feel free.
I guess that was a great presentation, and I've already seen reactions from people, Abigail, Urias, and the other people who used the reaction. It would also be good when you also make comments so we know that truly you really appreciate it, because we can't see the people who are giving the reactions.
From Josephine, from Fawn, and Abigail, thank you so much for your reaction. And they were just celebrating your art, Ikenna, and congratulating you.
Thank you very much.
So, thank you so much, Ikenna. That was really beautiful and amazing for analyzing poems and linking it up with ocean literacy. And it's one of the effective tools that we are using to design some of our academic, some of our educational curriculums for young people in Africa. And as this is good, Josephine and the Ikenna, we would always have you in any of our programs and projects that will be coming up, especially the ABCA curriculum that is coming up. So with that,